Welcome to another HRO Today educational podcast, sponsored by Appcast. I'm Jason Frenchman, Vice President of Marketing at HRO Today. We're the publishers of HRO Today Magazine, HRO Today EMEA, and HRO Today APAC, the producers of the HRO Today Forum series held around the world, and the managers of the HRO Today Association. As the world begins rebuilding after the initial effects of the COVID-19 pandemic, restaffing and revitalizing our workforces is top of mind for many HR departments. But how can you stand out in your recruitment efforts? The right combination of data, software, and math may just be your answer. Today, we're talking with Leah Daniels, Senior Vice President of Strategy at Appcast, to discover how this formula, better known as Programmatic, can solve your recruitment problems. Welcome to the podcast, Leah. Can you tell us a little bit about Appcast and how Programmatic is beneficial for recruiters in the current environment?
Appcast is a company that has been focused on solving the candidate funnel problem, right? How do you get candidates into every one of your recruitment funnels? It's a really big problem for a lot of companies. You can get candidates in some, but it's really hard to do it in all of them. So what Appcast has been focused on over the last few years is figuring out how to rebalance the approach to make sure you get candidates in all of the different funnels, to make sure your recruiters are constantly working on fresh leads for your opportunities and closing them as quickly as possible. Through those efforts, we have worked with large job sites, we've worked with the recruitment ad agencies, and many employers. And that has allowed us to become the largest data repository for the programmatic space. That means that we have tons of data in which to leverage and help our customers be even smarter when they go out to find candidates, understand where they're at, what the price you should be paying for them at this particular moment in time, which then feeds the beast of data and gives us even more information.
That's great, Leah. And we're excited to learn more about your company's approach. Now the big question, what is programmatic recruiting?
Programmatic is this word that gets thrown around, and it's not always clear what people mean by it. But when we talk about it, it's the leveraging of data and software and math to produce an outcome. So it's getting really smart information, software, which is automation, and then calculations so that we can change the course of something that's happening.
That's excellent. What problems can a programmatic solution solve for the recruiting teams?
Programmatic really is out to solve a handful of problems that a lot of recruiting organizations find themselves in. One of the biggest challenges you may find is that you have jobs, they need candidates. Some of those jobs get lots of candidates. We call those easy to fill jobs, right? There's candidates for days. Just turn it on and magic candidates show up. Meanwhile, other jobs don't get enough. Oftentimes, what we've heard in the past from job sites is like, well, it's advertising, right? You get what you get. You don't get upset. But that's not really true. They have more control than they let on. And so what we find is that sometimes bringing programmatic in helps you rebalance and make sure that you get candidates on all of your jobs, not some of your jobs. Another way we see people sort of approach programmatic is they say to themselves, I don't actually know the right bid. I don't know how much I should pay. This economics of recruiting is complicated. There's supply and demand. There are all sorts of tools out there that try to help me understand how many librarians are in Fresno with 25 years of experience. Okay, now that I know that, now what do I do? How much do I bid to get those people to look at my job? It's really complicated. And so having technology that can help you make that determination is often a good reason to consider programmatic. Another challenge companies have is they have a budget and it runs out very quickly. So they just are unable to get candidates through the course of an entire month. Or on the other side, you get lots of candidates, but many of them are unqualified. And you're not really sure how do you change that dynamic so your recruiters are not spending as much time with unqualified candidates. Another thing we hear from people, we need data to help us get smarter. And we don't have access to that. We have data on the ATS side, but it's not the whole story of the journey of the candidate. So how do we find data that helps us give us an entire story? And then are there opportunities for us in the business to make smart improvements that will help us both on our budget, but also as we look to some of the metrics that are important, such as cost to hire or time to fill?
Makes sense. So many recruiters always use job boards. How does this help with that? Why did programmatic emerge?
I've said for many years, there is no job board nirvana. For years, you had Monster, you had Career Builder, you had Craigslist, you had all these great job sites, and you go and you do a contract with each one of them. And then your recruiter sits at their desk and goes, well, do I put this job on Monster today? Do I use one of my job postings, or do I go with Career Builder today? Well, maybe Craigslist was better. I got a hire on Craigslist last week. Maybe I'll give that a go. Right? So there's this method where the recruiter is sort of the central node, and they have to make a bunch of decisions about what might be happening out in the market at any given time, but they probably don't have the data and the access to information that would make them successful in doing that 100% of the time. It's really a gut feel. And so as you're probably living right now, you may have these instances where you've had a relationship with the job board and you now are locked in for the year. And maybe as we're looking at the fall, you don't actually need as much access to candidates as you've negotiated, but you're stuck with it. There's lots of these things that happen in the traditional job board space that you may find aren't ideal for your business right now. And as the central node in all of this, you are now responsible for all the communication, figuring out, oh, I put this job in 2 places, but now I have too many candidates. I need to go find them and pull them down. It's just a lot of work to manage each one individually.
Good point. So how are programmatic job postings different?
So I started to mention this a little bit, but the big thing about programmatic is it relies on performance-based sites. What we mean by that is a site that you can manipulate by taking a job on or off, or a site that you can manipulate by putting a different price on it. We call those bids. So programmatic, for example, likes to bid on events, such as a click or an apply click or an applicant, a lead. Those are things where an event happens and therefore a price is paid. So programmatic can optimize that. Where programmatic struggles to optimize is in a posting where you've paid, let's say $100 for the posting, and you get what you get. It can't do anything once it's made the decision to send the job out. So with programmatic, you really want to have sites where there's an opportunity to make adjustments. If your current price point, price per click or price per applicant isn't working, you may want to bid up. You want to move the price point up to see if you have a different reaction. The same thing about slots, actually. If you guys are use slots, slots are another one where you can optimize, and that's because you can see that a job is not generating any activity. So you might want to pull it down and put a different job into that spot, optimize the usage of the spot itself. So this is really a big part of making programmatic work, is the underlying infrastructure of the job sites and the other types of performance sites that it works with.
So from what I understand, programmatic is really about the rules or the controls you use that can set and automate. Can you tell me more about that?
So this is really important. When we get to the rules section of programmatic, it's really about figuring out what your needs are as a business. So the first thing is understanding what your goals are. And goals are super important, right? What are you trying to accomplish? Is the jobs easy to fill and you're really wanting just to stop spend as quickly as possible? Or are your jobs harder to fill and you want to get broader, you want to reach out and find more candidates further, try to get more into the funnel itself? And where does your budget go, right? If you don't have a good idea of where your budget needs to be spent, then it makes it very hard to set up good goals for the system. So it's really thinking in terms of how your budget should be applied to the different jobs that you might have out in the market.
That makes sense. So for example, if one of my goals is about getting candidate volume, programmatic can help with that?
The answer is absolutely. It's all about how you approach it. So one of the things that's great about programmatic is you can almost imagine the screen that you run programmatic out of as one job board that manages lots of other job boards. It's the same to add 100 resources as if you want to add one new resource or one new job site. And it can easily manage lots of different pricing models. The place where it gets interesting is if you choose to use a job ad exchange or not. So a job ad exchange takes lots of different sites and creates that 100 new sources, or in our case, 10,000 new sources all at once. But the big difference is the payment model and the management model. So while sending out jobs and bids and all of that can be done on one screen in programmatic, the difference with an ad exchange is that you only pay one company and you only have to deal with one invoice, one reconciliation, where if you are managing hundreds of sources individually, you would want to have to figure out how to do an individual PO or IO for each one. And there's a whole set of vendor management that comes along with it that's outside of the actual jobs going out to market. These opportunities allow you to start turning over more rocks, find more candidates, especially if you're dealing with volume needs or hard to fill jobs. This is where having access to a wider set of candidate resources is really important. So figuring out the right way to do that for your business is one of the questions that a lot of folks have around programmatic.
How does programmatic help me target the right candidates for the different types of jobs?
Well, the first thing that happens with a programmatic system is you have to start to group jobs. And the way I think about grouping jobs is first, again, that budget level. How much budget can I put on this group that I'm thinking about? And how do I get jobs that are similar together? So customer service jobs or sales jobs or LPNs or clinicians or whatever it might be. And then there's another element, which is location. So if you need to find a lot of people of the same type of title, but you have to find them across many, many different cities, you'll find that the price actually varies on a city by city basis. And so starting to think about campaigning where you have a top level group, like maybe sales, and then underneath it, your different tiers of cities based on how competitive those cities are. So for example, if San Francisco and New York and Chicago are all in your group, you might say those are the most competitive cities. That is one group of sales positions I'm going to put together, where I might then say there's another group here that are easier cities for me to find folks in: Austin, Kansas City, and I don't know, Columbus, Ohio. So I'm going to put those together as a secondary group. So you can start to pull these different factors of jobs together so that you can create a good strategy in order to maximize your budget.
That's awesome. I understand data is also a very vital component of programmatic. What examples of data do you have that can help recruiters improve their job postings and understand how they're performing against the goals?
Interesting, right? Because the data will tell you all sorts of things, such as the day of the week that it's best to put your job out. So one of the things that we know is that you're going to get the most applies on Mondays and Tuesdays, and it steadily goes down through the week. But interestingly, I've just been looking at some data, and that doesn't necessarily translate to the best price of the week. So for a lot of folks, the best price is actually Wednesday and Thursday, but you don't get as many people. And so these are trade-offs you have to make in your business and decide what's the best day of the week for me based on the volume I need and the price goals that I might have.
Well, and of course, one question I know we always have about technology: can it save me money?
Yes, if you're spending a ton of money on jobs that either you're bidding way too high and so you're just getting lots of candidates really fast, you actually want something to say, hey, bring that bid down quickly, that you're spending too much there, or stop sending that job out altogether. It has enough candidates. That's usually where the saving money comes. Now, this is where I have to put a little star. I have never met a marketer or a recruiter who's like, I'm going to give this budget back. So I don't find people end up saving money. What they do instead is they get more candidates for the money they have available on more of their jobs. That's really the goal, is to get that peanut butter all the way down the whole list of jobs that you have, instead of having all the candidates you can find all hyper concentrated on just a handful of positions.
Right. And it's important they get their money's worth in this situation, especially as many companies are looking to continue cut costs this year. Lastly, thinking about the crazy year we've had, knowing that you've mentioned data and automation and whatnot, can programmatic help recruiting teams adapt quickly to changing hiring needs in labor markets?
If you add Agile to programmatic, what you end up with is ability to have a business that can adapt quickly based on whatever the market is doing and how it's changing. So you have much more budget flexibility. You can turn things on and off. You can reorder and shift priorities. It's really important to be able to control where your money is going quickly when you need to make changes. So what is Agile recruiting? Agile recruiting is a methodology that you can adopt that allows you to be able to plan for flexible contingencies, use data for direction, use technology for automation, and really get those real-time small micro decision-making out of the hands of recruiters, like what bid should I put on this particular job, and into the hands of the computers that can make this decision faster.
Definitely. And my last question: how can someone know if programmatic recruiting solution will work for their team?
Do you have jobs that you need to fill? If the answer is yes, it's a good start. And do you have some budget to work within? Also a good start. The thing I like to say is programmatic will help you determine the price point of any job. So to some degree, it can help with anything. But for the most part, we find it successful when you have a slate of jobs in front of you, so more than one, a handful at least, where budget can be moved. It's a little bit of Rob, Peter, and Paul, right? So Peter's got taking all the budget for his easy to fill jobs, You really want to move some of that over to Paul for the hard to fill jobs. So being able to rebalance, and that's really about the thing you need to look at. Do you have a slate of jobs that need someone to work on? If you look at it, for example, there might be a company that has lots of different kinds of jobs. This is a great example where you have like, I don't even know where to start. I'm going from left to right all the time. I'm always looking for different kinds of people. This is a good opportunity. Or if you have high volume roles, you're always looking for the same person, but different locations, and it's constant. This is another good opportunity for programmatic.
Well, thank you, Leah, for that deep dive into the notion of programmatic recruitment. I'm sure a lot of recruiters will find this useful in coming quarters. Thank you once again for joining us for another HRO Today educational podcast. I'm Jason Frenchman, and we look forward to having you on our next episode.